Hi everyone. So now we're going to talk a little bit about rhetoric, which is how people use language to persuade others, either to believe that certain things are true or to take certain actions. And again, we're going to start by seeing how this fits into the CRAP test framework that we've kind of brought with us all semester. And rhetoric really fits into two different areas. So the first one is the accuracy part of the acronym, which is the reliability and truthfulness of the content. So questions that we want to ask were, is the information supported by evidence, and does the language seem to be unbiased and free of emotion? And then there's also purpose, which was the reason that the information exists. So is it fact, opinion, or propaganda? Are there different types of biases that might be at play? And we're going to go through this and talk about kind of what rhetoric means, and then also what constitutes a good argument, and also what are some rhetorical devices or sometimes logical fallacies that different people use to try to mislead others. So to start off with, I just want you to think a little bit about what comes to mind when you think of the word argument, and then how that compares to what you think of the word opinion. So are there different definitions of argument? Does an argument necessarily mean that someone is angry? What would be more likely to be true, an argument or an opinion, and why would you think so? So what I'm hoping is coming to mind is that there probably are a couple different ways you could think of the word argument. There's different definitions, and in this class we're going to think of an argument as something that includes these particular characteristics. So a good argument is going to include a position on a particular topic. So to take the example of your research projects, you're going to need to take a stance on your research question. And this position is often called the conclusion in logic. So that doesn't mean the last paragraph of your paper. That basically means more of your thesis that you're taking. And then from that position, you need to have reasons to support it. So these are called premises in logic. So you need some reasons to back up basically the stance that you're taking. And each of those reasons needs to have some evidence that backs it up. So thinking back to the last lecture on research methods, that might be statistics. It could be different types of qualitative research, quantitative research. Another key factor of an argument is that it considers other possible answers. So remember, I told you to stay flexible in what you're finding out there, and don't try to just cherry pick sources that kind of support your existing points of view. You really need to take a broader view and kind of consider different possible positions or different possible conclusions from the evidence that's out there, and then select the one that seems to be best supported by that evidence. And the final characteristic is that it has a logical, organized structure, so it's not misleading in the way it presents its information. So a couple things that I would like to point out. First, I guess before we jump into turning an opinion into an argument, I should nail down what exactly I mean by an opinion in comparison to this definition of an argument. So an opinion is really just a point of view that's often formed without really consulting any available evidence. So for example, something that's just formed on the basis of instinct. So just something that seems natural to you, that I just don't like this or I do like this. And you can see this often is not taking into account, these characteristics of a good argument. So it does have a position, but it doesn't really have reasons to support that position, and it definitely doesn't have evidence that supports those reasons. And another key is that it's probably not going to consider any other possible answers. So that's what I mean when I say an opinion. And you can turn an opinion into an argument, and to do that, what you would do is just basically research the subject in question. So look for evidence that can support a particular point of view, but also look at evidence that contradicts those first opinions. And being aware of counterarguments really helps you clarify and sharpen your own ideas. So you may decide to change or adapt your opinions in the light of this new evidence that you've discovered. And kind of thinking about it in this abstract way might seem so obvious, why wouldn't we do this? But in real life, this is very difficult, and it's mostly because of this one thing that's called the confirmation bias. So that's something that we all really do, and it's often at a subconscious level, so we're not even really aware that we're doing it. So the definition of the confirmation bias is a tendency of us to favor information that confirms our beliefs or pre-existing hypotheses. So people display this bias when they gather or remember information selectively, or also when they take particular data and interpret it in a biased way. So this effect is much stronger for kind of emotionally charged issues or for deeper entrenched beliefs. So for example, in reading about gun control, for example, or abortion, people usually prefer sources that affirm their existing attitudes. And this is definitely something that affects us in both our academic and personal pursuits. And in an academic nature, researchers are sometimes guilty of the confirmation bias too, by setting up experiments or framing their data in ways that will tend to confirm their hypotheses. And again, I just want to kind of clarify that this isn't always something that is malicious or even done on purpose. Sometimes it's just the way our minds work, and that we just confirm what we already believe, and kind of seek out more sources that confirm what we already believe rather than really seeing things objectively. So it's really a challenge that we have to think about and try to overcome the best we can when we're forming arguments. So before we jump into this example, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of when arguments go bad. So I mentioned there are different types of logical fallacies, and you can see in the reading section I've got a couple handouts that will explain these different types of logical fallacies. So some of these you've probably heard just in popular usage, or maybe in a class if you've taken a class in logic or philosophy, this might have come up. So there's different types of tricks that people can use to try to get someone to believe them without particularly telling a lie, but really just kind of misleading them by using these different little tricks of argument. So you might have heard of an ad hominem attack, which basically means attacking your opponent's character or personal traits instead of really engaging with his or her argument. So not really evaluating the merits of his or her reasoning, but really just attacking them for who they are. There's appeals to emotion. So a lot of times when we're reading about different topics, sources will manipulate emotional response. So the author really tries to make us feel strongly about that issue instead of really presenting a valid or compelling argument using the characteristics we looked at. Some other ones are a false cause, so presuming that a real or a perceived relationship between two different things means that one necessarily caused the other. And then there's a straw man, which is another popular one, which is really misrepresenting someone else's argument to make it easier to attack. So again, take a look at our readings and you can see all of these in detail. So I just wanted to give one example of kind of how I would evaluate an information source to see if it's an argument or an opinion. And I have this link to a New York Times story, so I'm just going to jump out and show you that. So this link, this is going to be something that's in the opinion pages. So the first thing you might think would be, okay, it's got to be an opinion because it says opinion right up there. But remember, when we're kind of thinking about rhetoric, what we're going to be evaluating is the actual information itself. So I want to read these paragraphs and try to see if this guy is, trying to mislead me by using either emotions or other rhetorical tricks, or if he's just spouting off his opinion without really backing it up with any facts. So the first thing that I would want to do is look around to see if there seems to be a position taken. So is he making a conclusion somewhere? So just reading over this, you can see this is a relatively short article, and I would probably focus in on this part down here where he's saying an essential answer, the obvious policy solution. That seems like that's a conclusion he's taking. That's his stance, is that there's an obvious policy solution. And in this case, this article is talking about the value of teachers. And you can see here he's saying that the obvious policy solution is more pay for good teachers, more dismissals for weak teachers. So it seems like he is definitely taking a particular stance. So that's kind of the first characteristic of an argument. So next we want to look and see if there are reasons given to support it. So if this is the obvious policy solution, why is it obvious? Why is he taking this conclusion? So looking around, you can see that he is talking about, okay, the difference between a strong teacher and a weak teacher and how that lasts a lifetime. So he's really saying there's very lasting value in high quality teachers. So that's kind of one of his reasons. And then to look for evidence that's given to support those reasons, you can see he's citing a landmark new research paper which talks about this difference. You can see he has some statistics, so lifetime earnings of students. So he's kind of bringing up these different pieces of evidence that are going to support that reason that then supports his conclusion. So the other thing that I want to point out here, that you can use this when you're looking at popular sources like newspaper articles or magazines, is that this author, Nicholas Kristof, is talking about a landmark new research paper, and if you look at it, you can see he actually has a link here, and if you hover over it, you can see that this actually links to the actual research paper. So if you really wanted to evaluate his argument, you wouldn't just want to take it on his word and see the conclusions he's drawing from this, but you have the option of actually going directly to the source, and you can look at this study. You can see these are This is more of a scholarly source because it has these authors who appear to be professors. I could click on their names to read more about them. It looks like they're economics faculty at Harvard. You can see it's at the harvard.edu domain, so that's definitely high quality. So I would actually want to look over this original research and see if the conclusions I would draw are the same as this guy who's writing this opinion column. Similarly, down at the bottom, he's referring to a plan by Mitt Romney and making some conclusions for that are kind of fitting into his overall argument. So again, you can look at that link and you can see this goes directly to Mitt Romney's page. You can see he's trying to get me to sign up, but probably a little late for that at this point. But I think if I signed up, we could have gone directly to that plan, but that doesn't really matter. The main point that I want to get across is that you should really strive to look for the actual original research that's being talked about in some of these secondary sources. So sometimes it's as easy as just clicking on a link to the original study. Other times you might actually have to go into our databases. There might be just a passing reference to some sort of research or a professor who's studying this, and then you might have to jump into Galileo to find a database such as Academic Search Complete or a subject-specific resource in which you're going to be able to search for that author or that title of that study and actually get at the full text. Because you don't want to form your argument or your position on your research question just based on the op-ed pages of a newspaper. You're going to need to kind of consider the original research and then see if the conclusions that you would draw are the same as these popular columnists. So to this point, we've talked about looking for a position that's taken. So there is one in this article. There are reasons to support that position, and then evidence to support those reasons. So another key thing to look for is a consideration of other possible answers. And if I just kind of skimmed around here, I might see that at the end he does say, some Republicans worry that a federal role in education smacks of socialism. So this is him considering another possible position that you could take, from this evidence, but then he's basically discounting it and saying that he thinks that his position is more supported by the evidence than this alternate one. So the final thing is to really think about those logical fallacies, those rhetorical tricks that you'll find in those handouts, and think if the author is really trying to use any of those. So one example, you would have to think of this yourself. Would this consideration of other possible positions be a straw man? So is he kind of misrepresenting the Republican position by oversimplifying it? And that's something that there's probably not going to be, one easy answer, but it's something that you'll have to think about as you're doing this.